Hello fellow YouTubers, welcome to my build guide for my Crit Ethereal Knives EB MoM Shadow. I'm your host, Stuff Daddy with AoE Gaming. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of my first Bloodlines characters that I created in the Bloodlines Hardcore League. I did do a couple different builds this league and test out a bunch of different things, but this was the very first one I did. This was a build that I wanted to create that was semi-tanky enough to be able to handle hardcore while utilizing the usefulness of Cloak of Defiance and still being able to put out good damage. Cloak of Defiance, as you know, is the body armor that gives you the Mind Over Matter keystone on the tree. Very useful, comes in very handy, especially when you're running it with Eldritch Battery and have a good amount of energy shield percentage as well as mana percentage from your passive tree. Now, this build, I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. The only thing I really struggled with was sometimes on bosses. It took a little bit longer to kill them, but handled high-level maps very well. Did very well in terms of utility, getting around the map and everything. I ran a couple different utility gems like Veil Haste and Veil Summon Skeletons with it that worked out pretty well. And it worked very well overall. I was also able to run max level Arctic Armor, making me very tanky and also giving me the ability to not have too much issue with Reflect. Reflect was pretty much a non-issue with this build altogether. I rarely did it hurt enough to where it was doing enough damage to kill me or anything like that. You can see I'm running about 1700 mana unreserved and about 4400 life. Using Cloak of Defiance, this gives you about a just over a 6,000 life pool. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tree here. Now, you can see with this skill tree, you start out Shadow, pick up the nice physical nodes early on, get some cast speed, and you want to work your way up towards the Witch area, grabbing as much life as you can early on. Spell crit and the critical chance you can get later on. You don't really need to be stacking crit early. Eldritch Battery obviously is the main keystone for you. That converts all your energy shield to mana. This build, the tree here has about 127% maximum energy shield on the tree. Helps out, especially if you can get good gear with good high energy shield on it as well. We're also running about 90% maximum mana as well as 135% mana regen and 145% to maximum life overall. So the build itself, it does lack a little bit in cast speed on the tree. I only have about 16% cast speed. I do make up for it a little bit running Spell Echo as well as faster casting in the links, but we'll get to that a little bit later. This is just kind of a basic overview of the tree. If you want to take a further in-depth look at the tree, I do have a PoE Builder linked in the comments below. Feel free to take a look. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the gear overview here. Obviously, the biggest piece of gear is going to be your Cloak of Defiance. The Cloak of Defiance, giving you that Mind Over Matter keystone again, that's huge for this build. The 30%. Damage taken goes to mana first before hitting your life pool. Comes in very handy, and it really does. It makes your effective life pool much larger as long as you have a good amount of unreserved mana. Now you can see with this build I am running Hatred and Herald of Ice. Running Hatred can be kind of hard in some higher level maps. If you're getting hit really hard, you can drop off Hatred, run Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder. I find that the damage, it lacks a little bit, but you can still clear very efficiently without it. Let's look at the helm here. Your helm, as many items as you can get energy shield on, you're going to want. So you can see the helm is armor, energy shield. Life, mana, try resist is kind of your optimal setup for your helm. You can, obviously if you can't get the mana, that's no problem. Just get the life and try resist or whatever you need for your resistances. But you want to try to get life and mana or life and energy shield on as many items as you can, really. Now, in terms of amulet, you're going to need a little bit of dexterity on your amulets or rings. I found I only needed about 20 dexterity, but you do lack a little bit in dexterity on the tree. So I did have to pick up a dexterity note on the tree as well. Now, if you can get like, 30, 40, 50 dexterity on your amulet, that's great. But otherwise, a little bit of dexterity, spell damage, global crit multiplier, energy shield, and life is pretty optimal. In terms of a shield, you're going to want one with spell crit on it. Obviously, as high as you can get your crit chance, the more you're critting, the more you're putting out good damage. 80% or higher for the crit chance for spells is very good for a shield. Obviously, if you can get 95 to 99%, that's optimal. But other than that, life, mana, resistances. Boots, you're going to want, same thing, just defensive boots with life and resistances on them. I prefer as much movement speed as I can possibly get. 30%, fantastic. 20% or higher works out pretty well too. Rustic Sash is going to be your bread and butter for your belt. You'll see the percent increased physical damage. Scales your ethereal knives really well. Life, resistances on top of that. You can craft maximum energy shield onto it. You can craft elemental weapons or elemental damage with weapons if you want to. However you want to do it. I went with the maximum energy shield because I wanted more survivability. Gloves, same thing, just your defensive gloves, maximum life, resistances. I crafted more energy shield onto this too, just to anything I could do to really up my life and mana pool and make it more effective. The rings, you're going to want diamond rings, global crit, life, energy shield, resistances, mana regen. That's what you're going to want to look for on the rings. They don't have to be diamond rings if you can. If you can craft crit onto the other ones, but diamond rings are going to be your optimals. And I'm running a Divinarius, you can see, for the spell damage and global crit. The global crit and spell damage and crit chance for spells are going to be your optimal for your dagger. You're going to want to run a dagger because that's the easiest to get global crit and spell damage on, as well as crit chance for spells. You can see this is the dagger that I ran before I got Divinarius as well. Mana regen comes in really handy if you can get it on a dagger as well too. Either way, you're still able to run max Arctic armor with this build. Now, let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the gem setup and the links that I'm using. You can see I've got Ethereal Knives linked with, I believe, yes, faster casting, added fire, spell echo, and faster projectiles. Now, we took a more like cast speed and projectile speed route in order to make your Ethereal Knives hit further away. You can run it to where you do more damage, but I like the cast speed and running spell echo as well. Obviously, for your 6th link, power charge on critical would be best if you can get it. Arctic armor, that's just one of the utilities you're running. Like I said, you're able to run max level Arctic armor in this build pretty easily. Helps with the minus physical damage and minus fire damage taken. For our auras, we're going to run reduced mana with Herald of Ice and Hatred. The only reason I have Discipline on here is because I was testing some things out with the build, but I did have Herald of Thunder linked in there as well. Like I said, you can drop off Hatred for Herald of Thunder if you want to. Assassin's Mark, that's going to be your bread and butter curse. Obviously, the additional crit chance, as well as the additional power charge generation comes in really handy. Veil Haste, Veil Summon Skeletons, those are the utilities that I chose to use with this. Really helps with bosses, really helps with big packs and everything, just helps burn them down. Increased Duration, I have linked with those two for the Veil Summon Skeletons mostly. For a utility, I'm running Ice Spear with GMP and Power Charge on crit. You can see Ice Spear's base crit chance is so high, 56% crit chance alone. You're basically instant power charge generation if you fire one of those into a pack. The other utility, Lightning Warp with faster casting, reduced duration, helps you warp around the map really easily. And your cast when damage taken setup. I ran cast when damage taken with Enduring Cry, Immortal Call, and Warlord's Mark. You can run increased duration instead of Warlord's Mark. I chose Warlord's Mark because if I did get hit and chunked really hard, the Warlord's Mark would pretty much instantly leech me back to full health. Came in really handy. So, just something to try out, but you can run increased duration too. That's usually the typical that everyone runs. Now, in terms of bandits, you're going to want to run Oak and Normal for the 40% life, Help Oak and Help Oak and Cruel. That's another 18% physical damage. And a Lyra for Merciless. That's going to give you +1 power charges. That allows you to run 6 power charges with this build. Flasks, you're probably going to want 2 Divines. The Eternal here I just have because I like to have the Immune to Shock, and you're going to want to run 1 instant recovery, 1 probably increased recovery speed. Helps out pretty well. Granite Flask for Reflect packs if you want to run it. Again, like I said, you don't really have too many issues with Reflect, but Granite Flask makes it pretty much a non-issue at all. I'm running a Topaz Flask here just for a utility, but an Atziri Flask would be probably a really good utility flask to use for this. The increased physical damage added as Chaos, the increased leech makes you do a crap load of damage. So Atziri Flask if you can get it, otherwise just Topaz, Fire, Cold Flask, whatever you're running for that map. The only reason I'm using a Mana Flask is for the Immune to Curses. You don't really need it for the mana pool, you have enough regen alone. I just didn't have an Immune to Curses flask for something else, so I was running that Mana Flask. Anyways, that's it really. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you have any questions on the build, please let me know.